Mark Rogers TV back with you to focus on the ACC as we have for the past few days as we go through every Power 5 conference schedule in America, the SEC, the Big Ten, and we've got one more in the ACC. Maybe the most forgotten program in the ACC. The worst last season, if you just look at the numbers. NC State 0-8 in the conference, didn't win a football game in conference play, 3-9 overall. Beat up on a couple really bad football teams. Virginia, the Cavaliers went 2-10, somehow beat BYU. I still can't believe it, but the Cavaliers at 2-10. Wake Forest, though, if you would project Virginia and North Carolina State for the next few years, you would think, okay, the recruiting base is fairly strong, especially in Charlottesville with Mike London there. He's recruited well. It should finally take shape. They should finally be competitive. But Wake Forest, man, they had that run under Jim Grobe. But recently, they have just been beaten down and really whipped up by the best teams in the ACC. But if you look at the results for Wake Forest, I know they went 4-8. That's not a good season. 2-6 in conference play. Played Miami tough, though, 24-21. They lost that one. Duke, 28-21. The Blue Devils, of course, going on to the ACC championship game and gave Johnny Manziel all he could ask for in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Vanderbilt. This has been an exceptional football team in Nashville for the past 2 years in the SEC, winning 5-4 games in the SEC, 9-4 overall. Vandy only beat Wake Forest in the finale, 23-21. So Wake Forest has a pretty decent football team. Again, they're not going to win a lot of games, but they will scare some opponents. Let's check it out for 2014. Okay, the first 4 games, and we clamor for one, at least one. Should have 2 Power 5 conference teams on its schedule, but this is Wake Forest. And considering that Utah State is just about as good as about the top 35 to 40 programs in what used to be BCS play, the Power 5 conferences, that's a decent game. So it starts out like this for Wake Forest. They're at Monroe, Louisiana to take on Louisiana Monroe. That's a game that they lost in 2013 by a couple points to Louisiana Monroe. Shouldn't happen, you would think. Power 5 team losing to a Sun Belt team, but they did it. Demon Deacons lost that one by 2 points, so they'll try to exact some revenge on the Warhawks. Game 2 is against Gardner-Webb, a team that Wake Forest is somehow scheduled a home-and-home with. Gardner-Webb and Wake Forest in Game 2 on September 6th. Then they take on that game against the Aggies of Utah State out in Logan, Utah. That's going to be a very difficult game for the Demon Deacons to win over the Aggies and Matt Wells' crew there. Then they take on Army. Wake Forest defeated Army last season 25-11, so they've got the 4 games out of conference to start the season. 3-1 would be an excellent showing for Wake Forest to get them into conference play. They'll probably go 3-1. They could go 2-2. It's going to be either one of those stories. I can't expect Wake Forest to win all 4, but Utah State's not a giant killer. They're not a beast of a program, just very, very solid. So it's possible Wake could win all 4. I would expect 3-1. Okay, then they step into conference play, and the first 2 games are brutal. At Louisville, at Florida State, both games on the road. Louisville, Florida State. And again, in the ACC, if you're in the Atlantic Division right now and you're a program like Wake Forest, I pity you with, again, Louisville joining Florida State and Clemson. But those are the first 2 games for Wake in the ACC. Then they go and they play a couple teams that they could beat. They'll be decent underdogs, but it wouldn't be shocking if they beat either Syracuse or Boston College, especially at home. They've got those 2 games at home. Then they've got Clemson at home. That would take a monumental effort to scare the Tigers. Then they go to NC State, so that's a game against the doormat in the ACC. But we expect that, especially since we've talked to some ACC people that expect the Wolfpack to bounce back from that 3-9, what could be an aberration for a team that usually wins 7 or 8 football games at NC State. Then the last 2 games are non-division foes against Virginia Tech and at Duke. Wake Forest, again, 2-2 or 3-1, non-conference play. Where do we find a win in conference? Well, we possibly find it on the road at NC State, or maybe one of the 2 games against Syracuse or BC at home. Other than that, possibly they win at Duke. That wouldn't be a shocker. Duke winning 10 football games, but Duke had 4 very easy non-conference games, and yes, they survived a struggle in division play and outlasted some teams and made it to the finish line last season. But Wake could win that game. I think the best possible showing for Wake Forest in conference play is 3-5 this year. I would expect 2-6, another 2-6 for Wake that matches their win total for 2013 in conference play. Then they go 2-2 non-conference, and it's 4-8 again. Very best case scenario for Wake: 3-5, 3-1 non-conference. They get to a bowl game at 6-6. All right, Wake Forest fans, would love to hear what you have to say about your football program. Is it on the rise, or is it further declining? A team that's gone to bowl games in the past, near the end of the first 10 years of the decades of the 2000s. They were a prominent team in the ACC and, of course, won the ACC championship and going to the Orange Bowl against Louisville in 2006. Yes, so Wake Forest, let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.